Hello, everyone. Forest Focus for our second showing of a mad weekend. Yesterday, it looked like Anthony Elanga might be going to Newcastle. Now it's Odysseas Vlachodimos. No doubt every Nottingham Forest fan prefers that deal, but the biggest news is that the Reds are set to sign Elliot Anderson for a deal worth up to £35 million, we should say, from Newcastle, of course. So we'll discuss the merits of those deals, chat about the fees, and discuss what they might be in the company of Chris Aylmer from Forest All Over. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, thanks. Yeah, just landed in from Budapest about an hour ago. Jumped back in for you here. And yeah, I'll give the best views I possibly can on it, I suppose. But I won't have all the stats and info that Mark would normally have.
Yes, there is a small chance Mark's going to join us, Mark Sons, but I think it's pretty unlikely. But he did send me a good quote on Anderson, and I've got a few stats on him and a little clip that we'll play in. So we're going to be here for about 30 minutes or so. We'll chat about the deals, like I said. Just in general, Chris, it's been a mad few days. We'll talk more fully around it all tomorrow on the main podcast, but with the Niakate stuff, the Mangala stuff, and now Elanga potentially going, but that looks like it's not happening. And now this with Anderson and Vlachodimos. So much of it's PSR related. How do you feel about it all?
Well, all the fees seem very high. First of all, I thought we really did rob Leon. And that's not to say Niakate is not a good defender. It's just he played less than half the Premier League games over the course of 2 seasons. I think he played like 35 Premier League games in total. He'd been injured quite a bit. And at first I thought, wow, we are clearing PSR with just Niakate, and then we can sell Murillo properly and not have to get a Liverpool come in for a snip or something. But that was my first thought. And then the Anderson stuff yesterday, was a bit mad. I was initially really perplexed, but looking at the fact that Elanga might be heading out the door, and then that all spun around and turned around by the end of the day. And now today, obviously, it looks like Vlachodimos is gone and Anderson is in, and there's a fee of 35 million all of a sudden attached, which is also very, very high. So that was my feeling, was all about the money. And I know we all don't want to turn into football accountants, but it appears that this deadline is what that is about. And as far as the player goes, I actually do think Anderson's a reasonably bright spark. I've mentioned you this before we jumped on. I saw him against us in the game at the City Ground about St. Patrick's Day about a year and a bit ago. And he looked really good, scored a disallowed goal that game. And one of my good friends is a Newcastle fan, so I've kept an eye out for him. And he does look like a good player. Whether he's 35 million or not, I don't know. I doubt it. But yeah.
Yeah, I suppose I feel like we have to push the fees to the side just for now, because 35 million is kind of the headline fee. But obviously Gibbs White was touted as 42 million, and it was only 25 up front. I say only. And I think we have to bear in mind that Anderson might well be much lower, a lot of add-ons. Do we get into Europe, all that stuff? We don't know what the Vlachodimos fee is, whether it's 1 million to get him off the books, or whether it's 10 million to sweeten this deal. So we'll wait and see. Talking around the principles of Anderson as a player, and I've got a few bits on him. We discussed him yesterday with Rob, who's a Newcastle fan, so you can check that out. I've got a clip from Rob that I'll play in, but here's a little graphic from WT Analysis on Twitter, big Forest fan, WT_analysis. This kind of pie chart just shows what he's good at. He's a progressive midfielder, attacking midfielder, best as a 10, can play out wide on the left, can also play as a number 8. So there's a few options there, and we'll discuss where he fits in. But you can see in terms of breaking into the box, moving the ball forwards, being busy in the box in terms of touches in the box, making and creating goals, then he that is obviously a strength of his. So he does offer quite a lot, I think, as a 21-year-old. I've got a quote or two. There's a quote here, actually, I'll read out. It's from Graham Carr. Ironically, he's Newcastle's chief scout, but he's also father of comedian Alan Carr, as a small side note. And he is effusive in his praise of Anderson. This was a quote he said about him. You can go out and sign as many young players as you want. You will be doing well to get anyone better than Elliot Anderson. He receives the ball like Peter Beardsley. He kills it and moves it all in one motion. That's a gift. He's the best young player I've seen in a long time. Newcastle haven't produced anyone like him in terms of technical gifts, probably all the way back to Gaza. He plays the swagger. Every time he got the ball, you knew something was always going to happen. He always wants to dribble and moves off quickly. He knows he's good, but there's no harm in that. And also, I saw a clip as well with Gary Neville and Anthony Gordon on the overlap discussing Anderson. So I'll play the clip in from Rob as well shortly, but you mentioned it there, Chris. Like, there's a lot to like about him in principle, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, look, from the eye test, like I said, there's no question he does look like a good player. Technical, which Mr. Carr described there, is actually definitely the word I would use to describe what I've seen from him whenever he was off the bench or starting for Newcastle. But yeah, there is a lot to like. He's 21 years old. Newcastle reluctantly let him go because he's an academy product of theirs that helps him with PSR. So they didn't want to get rid of Anderson. Eddie Howe admired him quite a bit, according to my mate. He said he was one of those players that really wanted to break into the team. And bear in mind, Gordon, Barnes, and Almiron, all fairly attacking players, similar positions. He was competing with them, and I know Almiron didn't have a good season last year, but the season before, Almiron was like one of Newcastle's outstanding players that year, that got them into the top 4. So, yeah, he was competing with a lot, and he had that back injury that was mentioned there in WT analysis, and he was out for a few months. I think 4 months he was out for, and then immediately he came back to the squad. So he is clearly a talent. And from what I can tell, he does look like a really good player. And that's exciting for us to have all these young wingers as well. You know, Hudson-Odoi is 23, 24. Elanga's 21, 22. Gibbs-White's only 24. We've got all these young forward players who have a good bit of experience behind them as well. They've done the loan moves to lower leagues already. They've played a little bit in the Premier League, and now they're stepping it up to the next level. And that's an exciting thing too, his age. And, you know, even though 35 million, like you said, put the fee aside a bit, I would say he's at least worth 20 and possibly 35 with the add-ons, if whatever they might be. But yeah, he looks like a great player. But yeah, time will tell. Time will tell how he progresses. Like I said, he's 21, and we'll see. And maybe it'll be a bit of a relief off his back to move to someone like Nottingham Forest. You know, Newcastle now have their sights in the top 6 or top 4, and they are the richest club in the world. And he's competing with all these players. Maybe coming to Forest and hanging out with Elanga and Gibbs-White and Hudson-Odoi, who have had, you know, similar moves from bigger clubs, Manchester United, Chelsea, etc. Maybe coming to Forest might help him kick on a bit as well.
Yeah. You mentioned the back injury there. He missed 25 games last season with, I think it was a freak back injury. I'm not reading too much into it saying, oh, he's an injury-prone player or anything like that. He was out for about 4 months. So, yeah. I mean, if it is 35 million guaranteed, then that is a lot of money. I certainly would say that. But I think, like we're saying, we'll just hang fire and see what the terms of the deal actually are. We'll probably have to wait a really long time for when the accounts are actually declared. But I think Newcastle can declare a big profit up front, which is what helps them with also selling Minter, who we discussed yesterday. So, yeah, there's a lot around it. Do you want to come in there, Chris?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, like, it is a headline fee, like you said, but the reason why it's sort of grabbing everyone's attention is because it's right on the cusp of that highest, most expensive player ever kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like for Forest. So, you know, Sangari was hanging around there. Obviously, Gibbs-White between 25 and 42. So he would then become one of our most expensive ever players that we would have bought. So that's why I suppose it grabs our attention and we look at it straight away and go, oh, hang on a second, that's a lot of money to be spending. And he's not unproven, but he hasn't had the game time to prove himself as much as we would like. Then again, neither did Elanga, and look at him last year, he was flying with us. So yeah. Anyway, fingers crossed. His talents come to fruition, but he definitely looked like a bright spark for Newcastle whenever I saw him play for them. Beardsley, comparing him to Beardsley, though, that's interesting.
And Gaza, I know, yeah.
Gaza, going back as Gaza. Jeez, that's high praise.
I know. We'll get on to where he fits into the team shortly. It's good to have 280 people with us. Do drop in your opinions on the transfer in the chat, and I'll read those as we go along. And do us a favor and hit like on the video if you haven't already. It makes a big difference with the YouTube algorithm. I'll play a clip in from Rob from yesterday. It's almost 90 seconds on Anderson. So apologies if you've seen it before, but it does give some insight onto him a little bit more as a player. So, and then we'll pick it up on the other side in just under a minute and a half.
I really like him. It's one of those strange ones where he had this amazing loan spell, like you said, at Bristol, and including, I think, if people remember that amazing game when they got promoted on the last day of the season where they had to score 7 goals or something ridiculous, and he scored the winner. Joey Barton was the manager at the time and sung his praises, and he came back, and a lot of people, again, a bit like Minter, thought he'd go back out on loan, but Eddie Howe kept him there, and he got quite a bit of exposure. And then the last season, he got an unfortunate injury. Right, he'd been the star of pre-season. We played out in America in this Premier League Cup. He'd been the man of the tournament for us. It looked like he was going to start that first game, and almost like it's kind of carve a place out in midfield for him, which was amazing, really. Saying that we'd signed Sandro Tonali for £55 million, etc. He got this really bad back injury, which kept him out, and he kept getting setback after setback, which really hampered his development last season, because otherwise I think he would have gone on to start 30 plus Premier League games. He's a bit different to what we had in the squad as well. He's a really hard player to pin down. He can really see between the lines. He can operate on the wings, but also in central midfield. A lovely passer of the ball. Obviously only 21. I think the biggest thing he can improve on is not yet scored. Ironically, the only goal he has scored was a disallowed one against Forest.
Yes,
back post header, if people remember. And he came on in that game and actually made a real big difference.
I guess it's interesting hearing, reading what Graham Carr said and hearing what Rob said there, and reading a lot of people on Newcastle on Twitter, on forums and stuff. He sounds a lot like Gibbs White as a player, which is great, but he's probably not. I'm sure he's not better than Gibbs White at this stage of his development. And you're not going to drop Callum Hudson-Odoi. So where does he fit in? Are we going to maybe change shape and play 2-8s? Is he going to be an option off the bench and have to force his way in? And it's just great to have that squad depth. How do you see it as a lineup now?
Well, it's interesting hearing what was his name? Sorry, the gentleman just talked. Rob. So it was interesting hearing Rob there talk about that he's not just a winger, because in my head I've only pictured him sort of going on the wing, replacing either Gordon or Barnes or Almiron. But he has dropped into midfield there, according to Rob, and he was saying that he can play a 10 as well. I wonder could he play the 8 if he's a technically gifted player? Could he possibly play an 8 if we play 2-8s like you said? I think. Anywhere along that front line between Elanga, Gibbs White, and Callum Hudson-Odoi, he's going to compete with those players. We do need backups for those spots. You know what I mean? If anything happens to Gibbs White, we need someone who's able to come in and do that job. And likewise with Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, it takes the load off them as well when we want to switch the lineup. So I think anywhere across that front three, but it will be interesting to see if he does drop into an 8 position. When we play the 4-2-3-1. Well, yeah, I would say those front 3 players, though, he'll be rotating in and out between the 3 of them. I don't know if he starts immediately. I don't know where he would go and where he would fit if he did. But I imagine he'd be competing for those front 3 roles on the wing or in that 10 spot. But obviously, no one's competing with Gibbs White, like you said. That would be somewhere he'd fill in or rotate in whenever we're switching the lineup or taking the load off the others. But yeah, an expensive player to not start, but I just don't know yet. Because like he said, he's an unusual kind of positional player that we've only seen a small amount of. And every time I've seen him, it was always kind of slightly wider, especially that game he was referring to a year and a bit ago.
Yeah. I think the good thing is he gives us options, and maybe he doesn't start straight away. Maybe he does. I think Mark was speculating to me on WhatsApp, but maybe we play 3 at the back and it lets us play 3-8s, and then we don't play with 2 wingers, which makes you wonder where Elanga fits in. And there's loads of moving pieces around this. Like, a small part of me, I must admit, does worry that this is a precursor to selling Gibbs White to Newcastle next month for a huge fee, and we've already replaced him. Now they've reset their PSR, and we've reset our PSR. I mean, that's just me being overly pessimistic and worried, but I suppose, Chris, the thing is, there's such a long way to go in this transfer window. Like, today's one mini deadline, and then there's another one to come. It's really interesting how this squad shapes up by the time we kick off in September.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously this deadline is a separate deadline to the one in September 1st or whatever. They both should actually coincide with each other. That's the Premier League for you. But I think this is definitely a PSR move for Newcastle anyway. They got rid of Minta and Elliot Anderson in the same day to try and cover themselves. Whether there's other deals in place to move people on, I don't know if I'd be too paranoid about Morgan Gibbs White going. The fact that we complied with PSR with the Mangala and Niakate sales takes the pressure off us. And, like I said, there might be some sort of verbal agreement or a deal in place with Newcastle for someone else. But we hold the cards there. And I think Gibbs White, he is such an important player for us over the last 2 years that, I can't see us just I think he's pretty irreplaceable, if I'm honest with you, unless you get a sort of a world-class player in that position. I think he's irreplaceable. But this might be to replace one of the others. We don't know. Hudson-Odoi might be being shipped off. Elanga was rumored to be shipped off a day ago, and now that we don't want to sell him and don't need to sell him, according to Sky Sports News. So, yeah, I wouldn't be too paranoid or worried about Gibbs White going anywhere. I'm kind of a little bit happy that we haven't got rid of Murillo and we've still managed to comply with PSR, which means we have, two really high value young players in Gibbs White and Murillo still at Forest before we get close to September. So this gives us options. This gives us a lot of options. And that's the positive thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really big takeaway from it. Like, if we go into next season, like I say, a lot of water to travel under the bridge. If we go into next season with Murillo, with Gibbs White, and we complied with PSR by selling Mangala, who I'm a big fan of, but and Niakate for big fees, and Niakate did nothing wrong for us. But if we keep that and we add, Carlos Miguel still hasn't happened yet. I really hope it does. It's gone a bit quiet, but I think it probably will. And Elliot Anderson. And we've signed Moreira and Stamanic, who's gone to Olympiacos, and we'll see. But the shape of the squad, if we come out of it still complying with PSR, is really positive and exciting. So, yeah, that's certainly a good thing.
And the age of some of the players as well. I mean, we picked up Omar Balotelli, who's only like 21, 22 last year. He looks like a potential very good centre-back. And then, the whole front line. And Moreira is, 18 years old. And we're digging into Brazil a little bit. It bodes well for our future because we're building with young players who we can then sell on for massive fees or develop and build around in the club. Like at the start of June, I honestly thought in the back of my mind, I was like, are we going to lose Murillo and Gibbs White to try and comply with PSR? That's where my thinking was. So to not lose either of them before that PSR deadline is class, to be honest with you. And it puts us in a really strong position going into the sort of the latter end of the transfer window where the bigger teams try and pick off your players for cheaper prices. It's a really, really, really positive situation, I think. Yeah.
As we record this, we are 40 minutes from kickoff in the England game last 16.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. There were about 50 tickets left. So if you rush to the nav or go via gigantic.com and search for a navigation, you get a ticket. But they're showing games throughout the tournament. I know that Chris is avidly cheering England on, aren't you?
Absolutely not. No. But to be fair, you're playing Slovakia. I think you probably will win that game, and then Switzerland look all right actually against Italy the other day. So once you get through to them, I wouldn't necessarily count your chickens because they look decent. And good old Freuler scored a goal there the other day. Did you see that? Freuler banged one in. It was a good goal as well. People were complaining as to why we didn't play him number 8 when Cooper was in charge and he was there. But I think that's probably because if you look at the squad depth and the options we had, there weren't many. So, Anyway, good luck-ish.
Yes, on tomorrow, I'm going to pick up this Freuler thing because the whole revisionism around that season just really winds me up. Like, we should have got relegated that season, and we stayed up, and Cooper was a big factor in that. And also, we played Danilo as that advanced 8 towards the end of the season, and he worked out. There's only so many places in a team. Freuler had to do a job that wasn't necessarily the job he might have wanted to do. He did it to the best of his ability. I think he's a good player. He just didn't quite fit what we needed at that time. And maybe, he's going to Bologna. I'm sure it'll be announced next month. But maybe he'd fit in a Nuno team. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Also,
just to clarify some of that, the revisionist stuff about Freuler as well, which is important. Okay, guy's 32 years old. We brought Nico in as that sort of swap deal. Now there's an obligation to get Freuler to Bologna, but Nico Dominguez is 24, 25. So we've gained 7 years on a really good player. Dominguez had a pretty good season last year. And on top of that, you have the idea that playing Freuler out of position last year was an absolute travesty. But, there was a game we played away at Southampton last year. We won 1-0, and Freuler and Cooper had a bit of an argument at the end. I remember you could see them having a spat at each other. And I just looked at the squad and the team. Mangala, Yates and Freuler were our 3 across the middle. And then on the bench, we had like Cole back and Steve Cook and Wayne, all these players. And I was just like, Cooper was figuring it out as he was going along there because all the influx of players. And if you look at the squads and the teams that Freuler was playing in, maybe it was the right call. And, maybe it was the right call on numerous occasions to play him in that sixth position because we were trying to play more defensive. Now we're trying to play more progressive football under Nuno. It looks like it was the wrong move, but yeah, easier said than done. We're all coaches at the end of the day when our team's losing or when we see someone do well after they've gone.
Yeah, I think you're right. Dominguez was 26 yesterday, by the way. So
yeah, of course.
Belated happy birthday to Nico Dominguez, who is a good player as well. I look forward to seeing next season. So yeah, just 10 minutes or so before we go, the other side of this deal, although it will go through as a separate deal, I'm no doubt around PSR, of course, is Vlachodimos to Newcastle. I mean, we discussed this a lot before. Is he as bad as we think? Can he really be as bad as he was for us? Because on his CV was so much better than he was for us, really. But it's fair to say he did not do a lot in the Forest shirt, did he?
No, there's a regular contributor, Will, who jumps on our podcast every now and again, who keeps saying to me he didn't think Vlachodimos was as bad as everyone said, and he reckoned that there wasn't a lot he could do about some of the goals that were let in, and but Mark, some of the stats that Mark has brought up before on Vlachodimos, bear out and show that actually he wasn't great, and. I think it speaks volumes when two coaches in the space of a season didn't trust him at all. Cooper trusted him for a little bit and then didn't trust him, trusted Turner more than him. And the second coach who came in, Nuno, was an ex-goalkeeper, absolutely didn't trust him either. And we soon got in Matt Sells. So, yeah, I'm fine with letting him go. I'm absolutely fine getting him off the books. And that's just football. He might do really well at Newcastle. He might fill in at one stage or another when Pope or Dubravka or whoever's not available, but that's just he definitely didn't work out for us, and the stats show it, and the eye test kind of shows it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting where he fits in at Newcastle because he's not better than Pope. Dubravka's gone in and done well for them, so I guess he's going in as number 3. And again, it comes back to what the fee is for him and how inflated it is or isn't. That's the big question. Like, if his fee's inflated, then absolutely fantastic and it works out fine. But if we're just getting him off the books for virtually nothing, which I don't think we are, then it's been a bit of a disaster all round. But
how much was it? 5-10 million or something? How much do we buy him
I
for?
saw different fees quote from between 5 and 9. So if we get back what we paid for him somehow, then that's great, isn't it? I mean, I feel like we have to just reset our whole thinking around transfers, just like hit reset in our brain around transfers for the last month and until this loophole's closed, I guess, don't we? Really, the way the PSR's shifted everything.
Definitely, and obviously we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks, dealings between Villa and Everton and other clubs that have fairly inflated transfer fees. And I do wonder, is Anderson's fee slightly inflated and by how much, and whether you can prove that or whether this is a big issue. But it is loopholes that clubs are having to find to clear PSR. I mean, I think we complied already. So not us, but Newcastle specifically, definitely. And then when the deal's done, is it, does the Anderson deal happen on July 1st for us? But technically, does the mitigation work for Newcastle because they accepted it before we accepted it before the deadline? I don't know. But this PSR stuff has caused a mess. And in general, the Premier League's in a bit of a mess with the whole PSR thing because all these clubs are doing certain deals on the side. And you have Jim Radcliffe coming out the other day talking about how he doesn't want the top 6 clubs to be disadvantaged, and that caused a PR nightmare. So the whole thing is a bit of a mess. I feel like we're having 2 transfer windows, this one, and then there'll be a bit of a break, and then August there'll be a run up to the next one, so to speak. But they need to figure that out. They need to coincide the 2 deadlines, I think. Anyway, I'm sure everyone else agrees, but yeah, it's getting a bit ridiculous.
Radcliffe comments on the list tomorrow as well. We'll probably pick up on that where he's saying about the top 6 are the ones that count, basically, which is a bit ridiculous. But
it's exactly the thing is, it's not even like it's a verbatim quote. Like he literally said, "I don't." I had to watch it a few times to pick up on it and think, is this guy? Did he actually say that? But he talked about how the top 6 used to have power before they went for the Super 6. Then that ended, and he looked almost saddened by the fact that it did. And then he went, the top 6 can't be disadvantaged. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you've just got a massive ownership stake in Manchester United. You're coming out publicly talking about how the top 6 clubs are going to be disadvantaged all of a sudden. I mean, yeah, ridiculous, unbelievably stupid and ignorant as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like Justin's commenting about, how confusing it is, and it certainly is around how we can do all this stuff. I guess one concern, I don't know how it all shakes out, is what our actual budget is. Really, I'm sure there's budgets in place. Are we blowing a huge chunk of our budget on Elliot Anderson when we need a striker, we need defenders, probably we need a fullback? We probably need sort of goalkeeper, third choice out now, or whatever happens with Miguel. So there's a lot of business still to do. Are you slightly concerned, without knowing all the details, that we're blowing a huge wedge of cash without leaving ourselves short elsewhere, or do we just have to wait and see?
Kind of am. Like if it's 35 million clean, which it probably isn't, like you said, there's probably add-ons or other parts of the deal. It's probably not. But if I kind of am, yeah, a little bit concerned, because we do, like you said, we do need defenders. The goalkeeper situation, that should be solved hopefully when Miguel comes in. There's a few positions we need to sort out. Our midfield is far from sorted out. Mangala's just gone, and we're still waiting for Sangari to come to fruition to his best, and we need another midfielder, definitely. I am slightly worried that we're blowing a bit of our budget on it, but at the same time, the one positive I suppose you got to give our recruitment is they've sort of reached into this Brazil pot and gone and picked up, players like Danilo and possibly Miguel now, and Murillo, obviously, over the course of the last 2 years, and it's really worked out for us, and players for relatively cheap for their ability. So that's the only positive. If we're picking up if we're hitting some high fee for Anderson now for 35 million, and we managed to pick up some fantastic South American players like we have done because of our connection over there, then not so much. But I don't know. I mean, the transfer window is always crazy around Nottingham Forest, no matter what. There's always ups and downs. There's always last minutes, and there's always question marks. But a little bit concerned, but hopefully less so in a month or two when we get a couple of Brazilian superstars back in the team.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it all shakes out. I'll pick up on a couple of comments just quickly before we go. Keith mentions Brandon Aguilera. I think that's a fair point. There's a lot of talent there where he fits in. It'd be good to see him get an opportunity, but obviously if Anderson's playing and we have Gibbs White, then it's tough to see how he will. So maybe another loan for him. Derek has made this point throughout the chat, I see, that we need a striker, which we probably do. Don't know how we budget that. I think
is Che Adams gone? Is that deal off the table? I know that people are going to go mad at me for thinking Che Adams was any use at all. But I think it's a decent second, third striker option, especially if we don't get rid of Taiwo and keep Taiwo and Chris Wood. I don't know. I think Che Adams is decent in terms of budget wise as well, because free transfer.
Yeah. Well, a part of it's budget, and the other part of it that's so important is about Martin, about getting players off the wage bill. Like, the wage bill is so important to PSR, and it's kind of the forgotten thing. Like, our wage bill was pretty high, and we got some big earners off it who've gone on freeze. And if you look at Leicester, Leicester got themselves in so much trouble because their wage bill, by the time we got relegated, was around 200 million, which I think was the 5th biggest wage bill in the league. So I guess that's the biggest concern. Don't go mad on wages. I think that's the big thing. What does Dan say about we'll sell a big money player on deadline day? I really hope not, but that's just the thing around waiting to see how it all shakes out. Right. Any final thoughts before we depart, Chris?
I think we've covered it all. Just if Anderson is the player that a lot of the Newcastle fans seem to think he is, then we have got a really good player in our hands who's very young and has potential and could retain some of the value that we spend on him. I'm excited about it. I'm not 100% sure where he fits in the starting lineup yet, but having more squad depth with more young, talented players is a good model to build on, even if the price is a little high and inflated. I'm excited to see where the transfer window goes from here, because this part of the deadline blockade, so to speak, the PSR stuff, was always kind of holding us back. And as far as fans, we were always concerned that we were going to lose Murillo or Gibbs White for less money than they're worth. And for that part of the deadline to go past and those two still be Forest players gives us a massive, massive advantage. So I'm excited. And yeah, looking forward to the summer and some transfers. Hoping England don't win the Euros, but I wish you all the best all the same.
You were doing so well. Yeah, I agree with everything.
You have a big chance, though, of winning the Euros. You
we?
do have a big chance. Yeah, I know you're not playing well. I know you're playing useless, but like you've got the firepower. You've got great forwards. You've got world-class midfielders, and you do have a chance. I just yeah, and you've got a really good pathway as always. You know, bit of Slovakia today, bit of Switzerland next. So we'll see how it goes. Ireland aren't even near the competition, so you know, don't worry about me.
Switzerland did look good yesterday. Like Italy, I mean, Italy, one of the big guns, got knocked out. If Southgate by hook or by crook gets us through, then I'll be happy. If we, I feel like Southgate's got to win the tournament now to keep his job because it's been so miserable watching them.
But he's going to go either way, isn't he? Like he's going to leave England, even if
unless if we win the tournament, then he might. But yeah, we're getting really ahead of ourselves there. What was I going to say? Oh, I agree with everything else you said, apart from England's. Like I like the Anderson signing. I'm really happy if we start the season and get through the proper transfer deadline with Gibbs White, Murillo, Elanga, Hudson-Odoi all in the squad. That's fantastic. So yeah, happy with Anderson. The big thing's the fees and the money and how it all accounts. I mean, there's so much we don't understand around PSR and amortization. I saw on Twitter today, Pete messaged me saying, "Did you know it's done daily or something?" So say we sign him on the 30th, it costs us about 10 grand or something in PSR. It's so confusing, isn't it?
I heard that actually. Someone in one of the it's the Punjabi Forest group. I think it might be an accountant. He mentioned that it was done daily or something, and it just completely extinguished all my fears. But we're all becoming financial experts and accountants now, and everyone jumps in and comments. I was trying to find it. But yeah, no, I did hear that as well, and I was like, brilliant, 10 grand a day.
It is nuts. And even if these deals are confirmed on July the 1st, outside of the window. It seems like they're still fine for the current window because they were negotiated in the 23-24 account, so you can declare them for that and you won't get in trouble. It's so confusing and so mad, and I'll be glad when it's either fixed or we're just talking, we're just moaning about how, we stood off a player to score from 25 yards again. At least it'll be something that we understand, certainly.
Yeah, well, that's kind of all we want to be talking about anyway. But yeah, it's a messy situation, and I'm just glad we're kind of past it. And to be fair, if we have completely complied with PSR and we end up the right side of this, and we end up keeping Murillo and Gibbs White, or selling one of them for massive money and keeping the other, and I'd say our ownership have done pretty well considering the circumstances over the course of the last month. So. Yeah, look, it's positive. It's a positive ending because I was worried we're going to be here tomorrow and there's going to be our favorite players gone for nothing, and Liverpool were going to sneak Murillo for a cheap price, and that's all I'm happy about is that hasn't happened. The top six have lost, so to speak, despite Ratcliffe wanting them to have the advantage.
Good point. And I do still think worry Murillo might go because there's such big teams in for him. But if it's for the right money, then
exactly.
Then that's okay.
And the sad thing is clubs like Forest who've just come to the Premier League or other clubs that come up and down like Leeds and stuff who have those big players. Leeds had Rafinha at one stage, and I think they managed to sell him for a good bit of money to Barcelona. But having identified the best, these Murillo is on his way to being I think he's a world-class player. I believe that. And to be able to identify him and then have to sell him for less is such a kick in the teeth. Do you know what I mean? Because he might go on to do amazing things, and to see that Forest didn't get to profit from that when we were the ones that gave him the chance would have been really, really upsetting. So yeah, it's just good news all around. And now we can kick on into the summer.
Yeah, hopefully so. Look forward to all these deals being confirmed that mathematically mean we're safe from PSR, and we'll build from there. But we're back tomorrow with our main show where we'll delve into all this a bit deeper and reflect on what we actually know. And then we'll probably end up doing one on Tuesday because there'll be more to discuss then. Next Wednesday is with Paul Anderson. Some interesting stuff around coaching, his career. I mean, he actually works for Derby now. He's head coach of their under-15s, but he's a switched-on guy, so it's interesting to hear about player development and all that stuff. But yeah, do us a favor if you haven't already, hit like on this video. It does make a big difference. Subscribe to the channel, give us a lovely review on iTunes, and you can become a channel member and benefit from the perks of that. Right, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I see someone has put a shamrock and a picture of a clown in the comments. Fair play to you, Phil. And thanks a million for having me on. I was looking forward to talking about this. So yeah, not that I know as much as others, but I'm excited as a Forest fan, and look forward to moving into the summer. And we'll be back with our podcast, the Forest Hollow podcast. Give it a little plug. I'm surely a lot more towards the back end of the window. And fair play to you for continuing on this every day. I listen to your show pretty much every day or every second day. So fair play to you, and thanks for having me on. Particularly before 20 minutes before kickoff of the Euros.
One quick gripe about your podcast. You put a clip out where other Matt, has got his hood up, looking extremely scruffy, and that's my thing. So I wasn't happy about that. And I liked also in the clip how you'd edited it so you were facing each other like an 80s music video where you were singing a power ballad to each other.
I have to give credit to Matt for that. So Matt was the one that edited the video like that. He wanted to do some sort of style. I can't even remember how we set it up, but I'll give him the credit for that, and the credit for looking like ET, because a lot of people said he looked like ET on the bike, But yeah, he has stolen your look. But his name is Matt as well, so maybe that's, maybe you can coincide it somehow. I don't know, but yeah,
I'll let him off. Right, we'll let you go. Enjoy the England game, everyone, if you can. Hopefully we win. I think we probably will, but it might not be pretty. But yeah, like I say, good to have everyone with us. Hopefully see you tomorrow. But if not, we shall see you soon.